The man standing at the parking gate didn't know her name. He didn't recognize the lines in her face or the weight in her eyes. To him, she was just a woman behind the wheel of an old Lexus, quiet, alone, and parked where she shouldn't be. But in the next 36 hours, his job would be audited, his supervisor would be suspended, and the building he worked so hard to look important in would be restructured from the ground up. Because that woman, the one he tried to wave away like a delivery driver who'd missed their turn, wasn't just someone. She was the reason the building existed in the first place, and she was done staying silent. The sun hadn't fully risen when Dr. Olivia Monroe pulled into the South Staff lot of St. Barrow Medical Center, the hospital she had built brick by brick, policy by policy, patient by patient. The sky was still caught between steel blue and soft gray, the air thick with the kind of cold that settled in your collarbones and stayed there. Atlanta in the fall could be unkind that way, especially to someone returning after years away. Olivia parked like she always used to, third row from the side entrance, right where the surgical team used to meet for emergency prep huddles. It was instinct, not nostalgia. But when she stepped out, nothing felt the same. Her black wool coat brushed against the side mirror as she closed the door. Her shoes, flat, polished, quiet, echoed faintly against the pavement. In her left hand, a leather medical bag that looked worn at the edges but carried decades of muscle memory. Her initials, OAM, nearly faded, but still there. The parking lot was emptier than she remembered at this hour. No clipped voices from residents rushing into pre-op. No nurses pacing out phone calls. Just her breath against the cold and the low hum of the main generator out back. She was 5 steps from the staff entrance when she heard it. "Ma'am, excuse me!" Footsteps. Quick ones. Too quick. She turned her head slowly. The man approaching her wore a neon vest over a navy zip-up, clipboard in one hand, lanyard bouncing off his chest, maybe mid-20s, sharp jaw, clean haircut. A walk that said, "I run this part," even if it was just a parking lot. "Ma'am, I'm sorry," he said, already half smiling like it wasn't going to be a big deal. "This area's for doctors and internal staff only." She didn't answer. Just watched him walk. He mistook her silence for confusion, or defiance. "It's a common mistake," he added, his voice dipping into that soft managerial tone people used when they wanted to sound nice while telling you to leave. "Patients and guests enter through the main lot. It's just around." "I'm aware where it is," she said. 4 words, even, low, almost soft. He blinked. Olivia took one more step toward the door. The man moved to block her. "I just can't let anyone through unless—" He paused, glancing over her shoulder at the car. "Unless they're on the internal roster." She didn't raise her voice, didn't shift her weight. But something in her eyes changed. "I founded this hospital." His jaw didn't drop, not right away. Instead, he squinted, like maybe he'd misheard her. Or maybe she was joking. "You... what?" "I was the lead architect of its clinical program. I oversaw surgical education, policy development, ethics review, infrastructure expansion, and federal compliance audits for 10 consecutive years." She tilted her head slightly. "But let's start with parking, because I paved this lot." The clipboard in his hand suddenly felt heavier. He fumbled for words, some blend of apology, protocol, and panic, but none came out right. Olivia didn't wait. She stepped around him, her badge still tucked in her coat, unopened. She didn't need to flash it. Not for this. She pushed through the side doors without another word, and for the first time in years, she was back inside the building that had forgotten her name. But that was about to change. The door hissed open with a familiar hydraulic whisper, but everything that followed felt foreign. The lobby used to smell like eucalyptus and lemon-scented antiseptic. Olivia remembered fighting the contractors on that scent. She didn't want it to smell like bleach and death. She wanted calm, clean, alive. Now the smell was manufactured. Like someone had sprayed too much luxury air freshener and called it design. The walls, once bare and calming beige, now bore bold navy accent panels and digital donor boards. Where there had once been a brass plaque honoring the hospital's original founders, there was now a touchscreen kiosk offering directions in 4 languages. Efficient, yes, but soulless. Her name was gone, erased. No one looked up as she walked in. The young receptionist was focused on her phone, her manicured nails clacking softly on the screen. She didn't glance up until Olivia stood directly in front of the counter, coat buttoned, bag in hand. Yes? A single word, not rude, but hollow, mechanical. "I'm here for the medical ethics audit," Olivia said, her voice calm, casual, a statement that was only partially untrue. The receptionist tapped her screen a few times, unimpressed. "Name?" "Dr. Monroe." There was a pause, just long enough. The receptionist blinked, typed something, then looked back up with that same practiced smile. "I'm not seeing you on the schedule." "I wouldn't expect to be," Olivia replied, setting her ID gently on the counter. Not the badge, just her medical license. The kind that made people either flinch or squint, depending on how much they knew. The receptionist leaned forward, then froze. Her smile faded just a hair, enough for Olivia to notice. Okay, just a second." She stood and walked briskly toward the back, disappearing behind a frosted glass door with the words, "Staff only," printed in minimalist font. Olivia waited. She let her eyes wander slowly across the room. The art had changed. Modern abstracts instead of the watercolor portraits of patients and caregivers that used to hang near the elevators. The front desk was staffed by young, attractive people in matching uniforms, polished and efficient, like concierge staff at a boutique hotel. No familiar faces, no greetings, just movement. She didn't expect applause, but she hadn't expected this either. The glass door slid open again. A woman in her 30s stepped out, walking fast and tight like she was late for something important. Her heels clicked with precision. Her white coat was crisp, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, not a strand out of place. Dr. Valerie Knox. Olivia had only met her once, briefly, a guest speaker at a Harvard policy panel, ambitious, polished, hungry. Now she was the hospital's new operations director. "Dr. Monroe?" she asked, her tone polite but slightly guarded. Olivia nodded. "Yes. I wasn't aware we were expecting an audit." Valerie's smile was more of a weapon than a gesture, all teeth, no warmth. "I'm not here officially," Olivia said. "But it won't take long." Valerie's eyes narrowed just slightly. "Of course, though next time we'd appreciate notice. We run a tight calendar." Olivia didn't flinch. So did I once. A flicker, barely visible. But it was there. Valerie's stance shifted half an inch. "Well then," she said, recovering quickly, "if you're just observing, I suppose we can find someone to escort you. But please understand, we're in the middle of our quarterly rotation." "I understand." Olivia's voice was smooth. "But I've always found the middle is the best place to see who's really leading." Valerie let out a controlled breath and gave a quick nod to someone behind the desk. Moments later, a young intern, maybe no more than 22, eyes wide, steps hesitant, approached Olivia. "Can you show Dr. Monroe around? Just a standard walkthrough. Keep her out of the restricted zones unless cleared." The boy nodded quickly. Olivia thanked her with a slight dip of her head, but Valerie was already turning away, heels clicking louder now. As they moved deeper into the clinic's interior, past walls Olivia once helped lay out on blueprint paper, she felt something subtle under her skin. Not anger, not quite sadness either. It was a sensation she hadn't felt in years. Disbelief, not at what they'd changed, but at how little they seemed to remember what this place was ever supposed to be. The hallway was too white, not clean white, sterile white. White that tried too hard. White that made people forget they were in a building meant for healing, not branding. The young intern assigned to Olivia walked 2 steps ahead, too afraid to make eye contact. He pointed out things as if reading from a memorized script. New radiology wing, private surgical bays, donor-funded trauma pods, words meant to impress. But all Olivia saw were signs of a place that had traded soul for sophistication. She wasn't listening to the intern anymore. She was listening to the silence between his words, the way the nurses avoided her gaze, the way residents glanced at her badge, then looked away quickly, like they knew something was off. But no one wanted to be the one to ask. Halfway down the west corridor, she stopped. The intern stopped too, mid-sentence. She was staring at a bronze sign etched into the wall. Knox Pavilion, it read. She let out a breath. Not loud, but the intern heard it. "This used to be the Monroe wing," she said. The boy blinked. I didn't know that." "Not your fault," she said, but didn't move. Behind them, heels clicked again. Faster this time. "Valerie." "Dr. Monroe," she said, tone lighter now, artificial sugar. "We weren't expecting you to wander off. Our intern here is new. He may not be able to answer all your questions." "I'm not asking any," Olivia replied. There was a pause. Valerie walked forward, waving the intern away with a smile that made him vanish like steam. She turned toward Olivia, folding her arms. "Look, I'm sure you mean well, and I respect the legacy you've left. But this hospital, it's evolved." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Just barely. Evolved." "Yes, we're ranked 5th in the state now. We've doubled our donors, expanded cardiology, and reduced patient turnover by 22%. "And how's your readmission rate?" Valerie hesitated. "We're working on that." "Of course." Another pause. "I understand this place means something to you," Valerie continued. "But the team we have now, they're efficient, focused. We don't encourage freelancing, and we don't want confusion with patient families thinking you're a practicing physician here." That did it. Olivia stepped forward, slow and controlled. The hallway seemed to dim around her. "I didn't walk into a place I didn't belong," she said. "I walked into a place that forgot where it came from." Valerie's smile didn't fade, but her throat moved. "You're not on the active list, Dr. Monroe," she said finally, her voice tighter now. "You're not faculty. You're not a consultant. You're not a board member. So I'm going to have to ask you to be mindful of boundaries." "And if I don't?" Valerie's voice dropped slightly. "Then we'll have to notify security, for protocol." For a moment, Olivia just looked at her, not with anger, but with something far worse, disappointment. Then she smiled. "Do what you need to do." And with that, she turned, walked past the Knox Pavilion sign, and continued down the hallway she had designed herself, every inch, every curve, every door. She didn't need permission to be here. She built this place. She knew it would remember her before the end. The education wing had always been Olivia's favorite part of the hospital, not because it was modern or bright or state-of-the-art, but because it pulsed with potential. The future happened here. Residents learned not just to cut, stitch, and diagnose, but to think, to listen, to doubt, and to care. Or at least, that's how it used to be. Now the wing looked like a tech startup. Glossy walls, LED screens, a massive touchscreen board in the middle of the training hall cycling through donor logos, digital anatomy renders, and motivational slogans. Precision, performance, power. She frowned. Where was, "First, do no harm"? The lecture room door was ajar. Olivia stepped in quietly, standing near the back wall, unnoticed. A group of about 15 residents sat scattered across modern ergonomic chairs. The instructor, a young woman in her early 30s, stood confidently at the front, gesturing toward a 3D heart rotating mid-air on a holographic projector. "Remember," the instructor said, "clinical instincts are useful, but protocol trumps everything. Your gut doesn't hold up in court. Your notes do." A few students chuckled. Some nodded seriously. Olivia didn't move. She just stared. The woman teaching. She recognized her. Dr. Paige Livingston. Once an intern in Olivia's final training group. She had promise, fast hands, sharp recall. But Olivia remembered her most for what she lacked. Patience, A resident raised his hand. But what if your instinct tells you something's wrong, even if vitals are fine? Dr. Livingston smiled. Then you better write it down, document it thoroughly, and still follow protocol. Otherwise, you risk liability. Protocol? Olivia's jaw tightened, ever so slightly. She watched as a slide came up on the screen showing post-op indicators. Half of it was outdated. She knew because she helped write the new standard. 2 years ago. Evidently no one here had read it. Another hand went up. What about consent delays? What's our responsibility if a patient's family disagrees with an emergency procedure? Dr. Livingston responded too quickly. Ethics has its place, but let's be real. We're doctors, not philosophers. We save lives. A few heads nodded. One even clapped softly. That was it. Olivia stepped forward. Not loudly, not theatrically. Just enough. Dr. Livingston turned at the movement, visibly surprised. The residents followed her gaze. Can I ask a question? Olivia said, her voice calm but firm. A beat of silence. I'm sorry, Dr. Livingston said, awkwardly smiling. This is a closed training. Who are... Answer the question first, Olivia said, eyes locked on hers. Dr. Livingston hesitated. Sure. Go ahead. Where does empathy fit into protocol? The room was still. Dr. Livingston cleared her throat. Empathy, of course, is important, but it doesn't override. Doesn't override what? Olivia stepped closer. Liability? Deadlines? Quotas? Dr. Monroe. The name landed like thunder in a quiet valley. Dr. Livingston's eyes widened. So did a few others in the room. 1 or 2 mouths opened, recognition dawning too late to look respectful. I didn't mean to offend, Dr. Livingston began, but Olivia raised a hand, silencing her with the kind of grace only age and experience can earn. You didn't offend me, she said. You offended medicine. A moment passed. Not one person in the room moved. Then Olivia turned. She walked out without another word, leaving the room full of future doctors, some ashamed, some confused, and a few with questions they were finally ready to ask. By noon, the building had started whispering. Not loudly, not all at once, but in pockets, in glances, in the way a nurse paused before clocking in, or the way 2 residents lowered their voices as Olivia passed by. They didn't know the whole story, but they knew enough to feel uneasy. In the break room, 2 interns hovered over their phones, staring at an old photo someone had texted, a newspaper clipping from 12 years ago. Dr. Olivia Monroe launches Atlanta's most ambitious public-private clinic. The photo showed her younger, smiling, arm in arm with the city mayor. Wait, that's her? Dude, I literally told her to wait in the lobby. Meanwhile, at the main desk, Jared, the valet, watched from the security feed. He hadn't spoken since the morning, but his face was pale now. He didn't know what founder really meant when she said it. Not like this. Not with that history behind her. He pulled out his phone, started typing her name, then stopped, put it back. Stared at the monitor again. Down the hall, Dr. Valerie Knox sat stiffly at her desk, staring at an email forwarded by legal subject line. Media inquiry. Is Dr. Olivia Monroe affiliated with St. Barrow again? She didn't reply. She just stared at the screen, then deleted the message, because she knew this wasn't just a misunderstanding anymore. It was momentum, and Olivia hadn't even started yet. Olivia was halfway down the south wing when she heard it, a raised voice, sharp, rushed. Push another bolus. He's hypotensive again. She slowed her steps. Through the small gap of a treatment room door, she spotted a young doctor pacing at the foot of a hospital bed. Mid-30s, confident on the surface. But his voice betrayed something else. Pressure. Panic. A nurse tried to interject. Doctor, I think his abdomen. We're treating cardiac, not GI, he snapped. Echo was clean. Olivia took a step closer. On the whiteboard behind him, Eli Daniels, 74, KBG X3, Pod 2. Something about that timeline didn't sit right. She scanned the monitors through the glass. Heart rate elevated, pressure low, oxygen stable, too stable. She stepped into the doorway. Calm, measured. Did you check his hemoglobin this morning? The young doctor turned. Who? Dr. Monroe, she answered simply. And your patient is bleeding internally. He blinked. You're sure? He said, more defensive than curious. If you wait for the next crash to confirm it, he won't make it. The nurse hesitated for a second, then moved. Olivia didn't raise her voice, but her words carried the kind of weight no one questioned. Get trauma consult, prep for transfer, and keep pressure steady, she said, already scanning the chart without asking. The doctor stared at her, caught between ego and instinct. He didn't argue again. As the team moved around the bed, Olivia stepped back into the hallway. No need for applause, no need for credit. She had seen it coming. She always did. Valerie didn't hear about the incident from a report. She heard it from a hallway whisper, the kind that moves faster than official channels. Did you hear? One nurse murmured to another. That older woman. She saved a crashing post-op in 3B. Valerie froze mid-step. She pulled her phone from her coat pocket, opened the patient log, and scanned for names. Eli Daniels. She knew the case. Routine cardiac, low risk. Until now, a few more swipes and there it was. Manual note entry. Unusual. Not protocol. Entered by O. Monroe. Her jaw clenched. Less than 5 minutes later, she found Olivia standing at the edge of the East Wing, reviewing a patient chart as if she belonged there. No white coat, no clipboard, just presence. That was what bothered Valerie the most. You overstepped, she said sharply. Olivia didn't look up. No, I intervened. That's not your role here. You're not credentialed. You're not even on record. Olivia finally met her eyes. A man was dying. I helped him live. If your system takes issue with that, your system is broken. Valerie stepped closer, her voice lowering. I don't care what you used to be here. This isn't your clinic anymore. No, Olivia said calmly. It's everyone's. Which is why it matters when the wrong people are making the right decisions for the wrong reasons. The hallway fell quiet. A resident passed them, hesitated and quickly kept walking. Valerie adjusted her coat sleeves, the tension obvious now. This ends today, she said. No more wandering, no more interference. If you don't leave, I'll have security escort you out. Olivia studied her for a long moment. Not angry, just measuring. Then she smiled, faintly, like someone watching a child threaten to unplug a machine they didn't understand. You'll need more than security. And with that, she turned and walked away. Not rushed, not shaken, but with the certainty of someone who had already seen the end of this story. Jared had been quiet all day, ever since that morning exchange, the one that left him standing in the cold with embarrassment crawling up the back of his neck. He hadn't said much. He ran keys, returned cars, nodded on cue. But his thoughts had never left the woman with the old Lexus and the older badge. Now, on his lunch break, he sat in the staff lot with his phone in his lap and a slow dread twisting in his gut. He typed the name again. Olivia Monroe. Enter. The results didn't hit like a punch. They hit like a silence. One of those deep, undeniable silences that makes you feel small. Medical journals. Conference footage. A TED Talk with over 2 million views. Headlines from 15 years ago. Trailblazing surgeon launches Atlanta's first hybrid care medical facility. The ethics of modern surgery. Dr. Monroe's fight for reform. He scrolled until his hands got cold. She wasn't just a doctor. She was the doctor. A woman who had trained hundreds, mentored thousands, and built a system that people still tried to copy, even if they pretended it never came from her. He looked up from his screen. Across the parking lot, through the tinted hospital windows, he could just barely see her walking past reception. She didn't look angry. She looked focused, like she'd already been through worse and come out quieter because of it. Jared stood, his jaw tight. He'd made a mistake. That much was obvious. But now he had a choice. Pretend he didn't know. Or do something about it. And for the first time in his short career, he realized not doing anything was exactly how these things kept happening. The first call came over the intercom. Code Blue, Trauma Bay 2, immediate response. Olivia had just stepped into the north wing when the sound echoed through the corridor. She didn't flinch, but she felt it. Too early for a code in trauma. Something was wrong. She followed the sound, fast, deliberate steps, and when she reached the hallway outside the trauma bay, chaos had already taken root. Monitors were beeping off rhythm, staff rushed in and out, voices overlapping. A young resident stood frozen with gloves on, his eyes darting from monitor to monitor like the answers were hiding in the machines. BP's crashing again. Where's respiratory? Who signed off on the intubation meds? It was all noise, and no one was leading. Inside the room, the patient, mid-60s post-operative from the ortho wing, was bleeding out. Too fast. The notes said minor trauma. Olivia knew better. She stepped into the doorway. No one noticed at first. Not until Dr. Marcus Bell arrived, head of surgery, sweat forming under his collar. He saw her immediately. His face changed. Not surprise, but something closer to guilt. "You shouldn't be in here," he said quietly. "You're not stopping me." They locked eyes for just a second. Then a nurse dropped a clamp. Blood sprayed against the sheet. And Olivia moved. "Clamp here," she said, pointing. "Get suction on his left flank and find the original imaging, now." Bell hesitated, but only for a second. Then he nodded. "Do what she says." The room shifted. The panic slowed. People started moving with direction. She wasn't on the payroll. She didn't have an ID badge that scanned. But in that moment, Olivia Monroe had more authority than anyone in that building. And everyone knew it. The room had quieted, not because the crisis was over, but because someone had finally decided what to do. Olivia stood at the head of the trauma bed, sleeves rolled halfway, gloves on, giving commands with the calm precision of someone who had been here 100 times and had never needed to raise her voice once. "Clamp that artery. Good. Now suction. Left side. I want vitals every 30 seconds, and someone call hematology. I want a unit standing by before we close." The young resident who had frozen earlier now moved with purpose, his eyes locked on hers, following every word like gospel. The same nurse who had dropped the clamp, now fully focused, steady hands, no tremble. Across the room, Dr. Marcus Bell stood still, not interfering, not leading, just watching. And in the hallway just outside, Valerie Knox stood too. She hadn't stepped in. Not yet. But she could see it all through the window. The woman she tried to escort out hours ago, now surrounded by her staff, running her clinic, without a title, without permission, and doing it better than anyone else had all week. "Who gave her access?" Valerie asked quietly. Bell didn't turn. "No one." Valerie's jaw tightened. "Then why is no one stopping her?" "Because she just saved a man's life," he said. "And she's the only one here who knew how." Inside the room, Olivia's voice rose just enough to carry, "We stabilize, we re-image, and we recheck every assumption made before this patient was brought in. No more guessing. Not here." And just like that, the bleeding slowed. Monitors steadied. Voices calmed. She didn't thank anyone. She didn't need applause. She simply peeled off her gloves, tossed them into the bin, and stepped aside. "Take it from here," she said to Bell, and walked out. Like this wasn't even the first time she'd had to clean up someone else's mess in a building with her name once etched in the walls. Valerie's eyes followed her down the hall, stiff with pride and panic. This wasn't a disruption anymore. This was a takeover. Valerie sat alone in her office. The blinds were half closed, The screen in front of her glowed with a single open file. Dr. Olivia Monroe, founder, former chief medical officer, St. Barrow Medical Center. The resume stretched for pages. Published works, federal commissions, mentorship awards, hospital reform policies still active in 5 states. And then at the bottom, one line she hadn't noticed before, stepped down voluntarily to allow space for new leadership. Valerie leaned back slowly, exhaling. There would be no press conference, no confrontation, because what could she possibly say? I didn't recognize the woman whose name should still be on the plaque in the lobby. There was nothing left to fight. Olivia had already won, not with politics or titles, but with proof, with quiet, surgical precision, and the building knew it. Jared caught up with her outside. The sun was lower now, the same way it had been when she first arrived that morning. He jogged across the staff lot, heart racing like he owed her something more than an apology. Maybe respect. "Dr. Monroe," he called out, breathless. She turned, calm as always. "I read about you," he said. "I didn't know. I should have—" "You don't need to explain," she said. "I do," he insisted. "I made a judgment I didn't even realize I was making. That's on me." Olivia looked at him for a moment, then nodded. "Good," she said. "Own it. Then do better." He didn't reply, just nodded back, grateful for a grace he hadn't earned. Inside, the clinic had already started shifting. Staff meetings were scheduled, review protocols revised. One of the nurses had pulled the old bronze plaque from storage. It would go back up, not because Olivia asked, but because someone decided it should have never come down. In the main training room, a new quote had been written on the board, in black ink and clean letters. "We're not here to impress. We're here to do what's right. Dr. O.A. Monroe." Olivia placed her bag in the back seat of her car. Same old Lexus, same cracked leather. She didn't need a new one. This one had seen enough to know the road. Before closing the door, she glanced once more at the hospital, not with pride, not with bitterness, but with closure. This place would be fine now. And if not, it knew where to find her. She started the engine, pulled out of the lot, and drove off into the soft orange light of late afternoon. No press, no speeches, no grand farewell. Just a woman in an old car, moving on to the next place that needed remembering.